how can you come out and like have a go at your team for having a lack of creativity when 3 of the players that you've got on the pitch that breed a lot of that creativity in Caicedo, Fernandes, and João Pedro aren't even training every game? What do you expect? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And today, I want to do something that I don't think I've actually done since I've started this channel, and I actually just want to spend some time talking about Maresca. I'll get this out there straight away, disclaimer, I am nowhere near Maresca out. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was Graham Potter out, and that was because things got atrocious. I think you have to back your manager. Do you know what I mean? I understand that it's difficult when results don't go your way, but I can't be hyperbolic, and, you know, like I say, the Graham Potter situation was completely tragic, and he absolutely needed to go. But other than that, I do firmly believe that you've got to back your manager. Also, just from a logistical standpoint, there aren't a huge amount of other options available on the market at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Realistic ones, you know, ones that haven't already worked at the club for a start. So, you know, just before we get into anything else, I'm going to come back out. This isn't a hate piece on Maresca saying I absolutely want him out, but I do just want to talk about some things in particular that I think I would like to see him improve upon in the near future. But guys, before we get into it, if you are enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honor of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. So the thing I want to talk about today, largely vis-a-vis Enzo Maresca, is leadership, right? Because tactics is one thing, how he handles players' injuries and stuff is another thing that I'll probably dip into a little bit. But for the most part, what I want to do today is talk about leadership. And that has been inspired by a conversation we had on the Blue Lounge yesterday. Now, this wasn't actually pertaining to Enzo Maresca, but we talked about what good leadership is yesterday, where it comes from, and we had some disagreements. Do you know what I mean? We had some disagreements. Now, I am generally a believer that you can be a good leader without huge amounts of experience. And I think, in all honesty, when we lose a game like yesterday against Sunderland, that in itself, like, depending on the context of it, like, we should have won that game. Yes, we absolutely should have won that game, of course, but we came off the back of 4 wins before that. So that shows reasonably good tactical acumen from the manager. You know, we beat Liverpool and we won 2 games in the Champions League. And do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, there are some good reasons to think that, okay, things, you know, tactically and as far as the players goes, we've got injuries, bloody yada, 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 yada. Losing the game in itself doesn't annoy me. Like, it isn't the thing that absolutely annoys me the most. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like the project and the big picture and looking forward, what is irritating me about Enzo Maresca is how he is in the press, man, and his pre-dereliction to throw in players under the bus when things don't go our way. There's a few examples of this. So yesterday is a really good example. I've got a few quotes from Maresca yesterday to go through. So we were not good enough. When you are not good enough in the Premier League, the consequence can be a bad one. Okay, so that one in itself, like, that's true. Do you know what I mean? And he said we, so he's kind of including himself in that. But then he specifically blamed the defenders for the stoppage time goal, saying it was an easy situation they should have dealt with as they were 2-on-1 against the long ball. Okay, so he's criticising the defenders. He also criticised the attackers for lacking creativity and failing to capitalise on early momentum. And these aren't even just isolated in the defeat from yesterday. Do you know what I mean? After the 2-2 draw with Brentford in October, though not a loss, Maresca was visibly frustrated post-match, saying, "We were 2-0 up and stopped playing. That's a mentality issue." He criticised defenders for switching off and said the team lacked maturity. So obviously the team lacked maturity because we've got a bunch of kids. Do you know what I mean? And you know, I don't mean that in a horrible way. The kids are doing all right. Do you know what I mean? The kids are generally doing all right. There is a pattern of Maresca failing to take accountability. And for instance, he was the same in the Man United game and the 2 games in a row where we were 10 men down and we lost those games because he failed to make subs. He came out in those games in particular, it was like a press conference before the next game, and said, I need to learn to deal with this. Do you know what I mean? But in the moment, he seems to completely just go to throwing the players under the bus and not taking that responsibility for himself. Now, obviously, who I want to compare this to is Jose Mourinho, right? Jose Mourinho was the master at deflecting criticism from his players. And this is something I think is even more important when you've got a team full of kids that are developing and learning, right? We haven't got players in their prime, 27, 28, 29, some 30-year-olds that have been doing it for a while and can soak up this pressure. Do you know what I mean? And when Maresca comes out after a loss, which ultimately he's an enormous part of, and instantly throws all the players under the bus, that is so counter to the stuff like what Jose Mourinho used to do. Do you know what I mean? There was a game against Southampton in 2015 where we lost against Southampton, and Jose Mourinho came out and said, referees are afraid to give decisions to Chelsea. Do you know what I mean? And instantly he knew that what would happen is all of that media attention would then be on him. The headlines would all be about him and Jose Mourinho criticising referees. He did the thing where he's like, I prefer not to speak. I prefer not to speak. Do you know what I mean? And even by basically not saying anything, he said enough to deflect the individual criticism from the players and take it onto himself. When he was at Man United, there was a game that he lost with a poor performance. I can't remember who it was against, but he went on that tirade, didn't he? I won more Premier Leagues alone than the other 19 managers combined. And he just absolutely takes all of the pressure off of his players in that respect. And for me, that is a big part of leadership. Now, this isn't the only thing that I think Maresca should do, but I do think it is one thing that is happening more and more often, that is highlighting that he is also a young manager. Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, he's learning from his mistakes on the pitch for the most part. For instance, the substitutions. And you know, we've seen some mistakes that he's been making on the pitch and with the starting lineups that he's done a few times, and then he's gone, okay, I'll change that tactically. Yeah, okay, he might be slowly learning tactically, but in terms of being a leader, if you want to win big titles, your team have to respect you and you have to be a leader. There's other examples as well, isn't it? Even like the stuff with Mark Gue. He was asked about Mark Gue and why he wasn't getting opportunities, and he said Mark wasn't training him the way that I wanted him to. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, again, you're just throwing him out, you know, and I guess there's an argument to be made for like challenging your players and showing, you know, and criticize them in the press can give them, may hopefully give them a bit of fire or something. But at the end of the day, man, like, I just don't really see the value in it, especially when all of our players are so young. I think that if we're going to galvanise this team, they need to feel protected by the manager, not just for the injuries, not just for rotation, but in the press. Because being a footballer is harder than it's ever been today because of things like social media. Because you can wake up in the morning and get your phone out and have a million notifications. Like Cole Palmer talked about this a little bit in the season last season when he went off form. Do you know what I mean? He was just like, you know, obviously he was struggling for a bit and everyone went from absolutely loving him and then all of a sudden he's getting slated in the press and people having a massive go at him. This is difficult for anyone, but when your entire team is made up of an average age of like 22, 23 years old, do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's really, really hard to take, man. And as a mature, responsible man and a leader of this crop of players, the onus for me is on Enzo Maresca to come out and take some of that. And I think that the players could potentially play better because of it, because they feel like the manager's got their back. At the moment, it feels like whenever something doesn't go our way, whenever we get a loss or something like that, Maresca is quick to blame, you know, oh, you know, I need a centre back, or, you know, the player's mentality was bad, or the decision making was poor, or whatever. And even if this is the big thing, right? Even if the reason that we didn't win a game isn't actually Maresca's fault, as a leader, you still take it on your back and you don't just deflect it onto the players. Do you know what I mean? So maybe this is a little bit of a ranty one. I would absolutely love to know what you guys think about it in the comments. But I think the thing is, if we are, like I say, if we're going to go forward, eventually being like, we want to win the Premier League, we want to win the Champions League, we want to be a team that competes for the highest honours on a regular basis, then leadership from the top is an enormous part of that, right? Respect is an enormous part of that. Fear, yes, to an extent. Like, you know, I've mentioned Jose Mourinho. Some of those players, he will have struck fear into them, but he will have done it for the most part. And I'm not saying never, do you know what I mean? But for the most part, he will have done it behind closed doors. And those conversations about the tactics not being good enough or whatever in high profile moments will have been reserved for the players in training. Do you know what I mean? You teach players by dropping them, do you know what I mean? Or giving other people opportunities. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to come out in the press and be like, Trevor Chalobah was rubbish, or João Pedro's got no creativity. Do you know what I mean? And like I say, we can talk about, you know, he didn't specifically mention players, but when he's talking about the defense and the attack not being creative, like, he is as good as directly speaking to players. And I think that's harsh as well, isn't it? Because if you think about the situation that he also admitted yesterday, is like João Pedro, Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo aren't even training every day because of their injury issues. So he's happy to keep putting them on. Because the thing is, I released a video yesterday, obviously, my match review, go and check that out. And I also did a YouTube short specifically talking about the João Pedro thing. I think he needs to spell out of the team. How can you come out and like have a go at your team for having a lack of creativity when 3 of the players that you've got on the pitch that breed a lot of that creativity in Caicedo, Fernandes and João Pedro aren't even training every game? What do you expect? So not only is he throwing players under the bus, he's throwing players under the bus whilst in the same breath putting them in the starting 11 when they can't train every day. It's like, mate, like I say, man, this is not Maresca out. Absolutely not. I like Maresca, man. I like Maresca. Do I think he's the guy that is going to lead us to the greatest honours? I don't know. All I see at the moment is a developing manager with a developing team. But the development, my whole point of this video is the development is not only about the tactics, the formations, the teams, the lineups. Do you know what I mean? It is as much about leadership and galvanizing a young group of players. It's not Enzo Maresca's decision to have a team of really young players, but he took the job knowing that is what he was going to have, and he is doing the job knowing that that is not likely to change in the near future. Look, man, maybe things might, we also talked about on the stream yesterday, Dave Fallows coming in. Maybe that's going to change stuff. I have an idea in the back of my head that it's possible that Dave Fallows is going to come in and bring in some slightly older players that are, low value, high potential, like he did at Liverpool. We'll have to see how that goes. But at the end of the day, for the rest of this season at least, Maresca's got a young team to work with. We're not going to go and buy a 30-year-old centre-back, a 30-year-old midfielder, and a 28-year-old striker just to get some experience in the team. It's not going to happen. Although Ivan Toney has been talked about in January, I would be interested to see what happens there. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments about this, man. I think this is a really, really, really important one. Tactically, I like the idea of what Maresca's doing, when it works and when it does well. The PSG game, we were phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And he got the best out of the likes of Cole Palmer and João Pedro. And he's proved, against some big teams, we beat Liverpool twice with him, do you know what I mean? He has definitely proved that he can stand up to some of the bigger teams in the big games. 100% that is true. He's struggling to figure out how to break down a low block, which is a problem that we've had with Chelsea for a long time. Is the answer to breaking down and beating the low block, throw your players under the bus after a loss? No, I don't think it is, man. I don't think it is. I think that Maresca, for me, needs to, and the thing is, like I say, he has already done this once, after throwing the players under the bus and not taking responsibility for the losses against Man United and Brighton, when he made bad decisions after we went 10 men down. In the press conference leading up to the game after those games, he then said, I'm not used to playing with 10 men and I need to make some, okay, cool, look, you've done it in that moment right there, literally right there, you have taken responsibility and earned more of my respect as the manager, and I would have thought some of the players as well, and we went on to a reasonably good run of form after that. And I'm not saying that was the only reason for it, but you got to think the players would be more happy, more willing, more energized, more passionate and more committed to playing for their manager when they think he's got their back. Have the players back, Maresca. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yes, the thing is, the truth is, I guess, to flesh it out a little bit, Maresca's job is the one at risk. I don't mean right now. I don't think he's under pressure of losing his job right now. But I mean in general, between being a player and being a manager, you can't sack players, but you can sack managers. Do you know what I mean? Players have contracts that have to be abided by and are much, much, much more expensive than managers. So it's really difficult to just terminate those contracts and stuff as well. Do you know what I mean? So I guess, there is that element to think about it, but don't be a coward about it, man. Do you know what I mean? Maresca, for me, he's not going to be watching this, so, it's not like I'm talking to him or whatever. But for Maresca, for me, is doing a lot of things right, and he is having a really difficult time, really young squad, insane amount of injuries, absolutely insane amount of injuries. So I do feel for him in that respect. Like, it's not an easy job that he's got this season at all. If we'd have had our entire squad available to us for the entire season, then things could well have been really different and we wouldn't have found ourselves in these situations. But we are in the situation, and it is when you're backed against the wall that you find out what kind of character you really are. And what we keep seeing time and time again with Enzo Maresca is that his pre-dereliction is to throw players under the bus instead of try and deflect some of that pressure onto himself, which I think is even more prevalent with this team than it was with Jose Mourinho's teams, because our team is full of kids. Do you know what I mean? These players are like, they are younger, they are, Do you know what I mean? They are developing now, and it's like you need to win their respect. So they go into the next few seasons for you, trying to fight for you, not just themselves, not just their team, but you as a manager. Because John Terry, Didier Drogba, Diego Costa, Fabregas, Matic, you know, all of these guys, Gary Cahill, David Luiz, do you know what I mean? Willian, like Anelka, Malouda, like all of them played for the manager. Do you know what I mean? They played for the manager, not just for the team, not just for themselves, not just for the titles. And I think that is where Maresca needs to get. I think Maresca has got a good thing about him. Do you know what I mean? I like the way he talks. I like listening to him, you know, and I do appreciate the fact that he is trying to be candid about the things that are going wrong in the game. But like I say, that is never backed up with, and I take a lot of this responsibility on myself because I made bad decisions. And I think he would probably be surprised at the difference he would see from his team if that was the case. So that's it, guys. Little bit of a ranty one about leadership, but I just think it's really important. And obviously, Jose Mourinho is still on my brain a little bit because we played him in the Benfica game. And do you know what I mean? It's like, I know we're still far away from title challenges, and, you know, maybe a Champions League run feels more realistic than a Premier League run at this point because we are starting to tell the world that we're a cup team. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. Do I think we'll win the Champions League? No, probably not. But I don't think we're close to the Premier League yet. And I just think if we're going to get close to the Premier League, Maresca needs to start making some changes to try and garner more respect from the team. I haven't heard that the team hate him or anything, by the way. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that there's trouble in the locker room, but at the same time, it is always possible to earn more respect from your players. And that is something that I really want to see Maresca start doing. Nice one, guys. Thanks very much for sticking around until the end of the video. If you did, I will catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.